Welcome to MSP 1337. I'm your host, Chris Johnson, a show dedicated to cybersecurity challenges, solutions, a journey together, not alone. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of MSP 1337. It is that time for Fireside Chat with Matt Lee. Matt, welcome to the show.
Man, it is awesome to be here. I'm actually in my home studio for like 28-ish hours, give or take. And then I'm heading to RSA. So if anybody wants to guess what time this was recorded, you can now guess that fairly adequately. But I'm glad to be here.
We have to pick when we can do this at the right time. I mean, the controls aren't changing right now. So
the magic minutes that our schedules align once a month, is that the time you're talking about?
Let's
we're not already meeting for something else.
Well, and funny enough, I think we did last month's Fireside Chat. We were both in our hotels.
Yes, we've changed course. You're at home as well, so this is fantastic.
I've got a couple weeks left before I have to go anywhere. I think I'll be in Denver.
Yeah, nice.
For a cybersecurity summit, so that should also narrow our timelines down on when this is recorded.
That's fair. It's fair.
All right, so we started this all the way back in 2023. So we are now past the 12-month marker.
You might say 13 or so months ago might be the adequate guess.
Specifically 13 months. We're on security awareness and skills training, and we have in the past done a little bit of bouncing. So not all the controls were done in sequential order, but we have kind of circled back. We're in order now. Security awareness and skills training, in my humble opinion, is perhaps one of the most important controls, not necessarily because of CIS, but more whether you're a solution provider, any business, if you're not doing security awareness and skills training, a lot of the other things that we do.
Yeah.
I always say this: if I don't understand the why, I'll find a way to why not.
Well, and I think, let's just talk about the elephant in the room. I'm going to attack your humans, whether that be their identity, whether that be the way they leave their device, whether that be the access to their device that allows me to do things. Like, I'm going to attack your humans, right?
No matter how humble and ignorant they might be, right? Like, they may think I am not worthy of being hacked. And you're like, well, that may be true, but that's not going to stop them from trying, like, because they don't know who you are in most cases.
Yeah. Well, and even if you think about, like, let's say I'm going to deliver payloads to people, or those are all going to be some component of social engineering to get them to click on it and have that detonation happen.
Exactly.
So let's tackle why this matters so much. Control 14, security awareness and skills training. There are 9 total safeguards in this, and I will almost promise, Chris, that every MSP after hearing this, as long as they're honest with themselves, will find giant gaps in what it takes to actually secure and train the workforce. I think that we should shed some light. If nobody's listened to another episode, listen to the whole thing of this one. I really think it should shed some light on your understanding of that first front. And we talk about it. Everybody says that 99% of attacks happen through the human layer or some hyperbolous number, right? It's probably accurate. I mean, if you think about it, there's some interaction that involves a human somewhere along the kill chain. Failure-wise, right? So there's training, and there's training of the staff that do the work that even manage those systems and protect them, right? That's the other component that's often not thought about from this security training. Like, should I train my technicians? Yeah, by God, you should. That's their specific work function. You need to train them on how they're doing the things they're doing from that perspective.
Well, I think this also adds or sheds light on the whole. If you look at the specific language here, security awareness, okay, we all kind of embrace that one a little bit.
Sure.
But then when we talk about
skills.
And skills training. So, like, we're not talking about skills like, how to go and configure.
How to spot a phishing email.
Right.
We're talking about how to use your stupid system securely. Right? This is what we're talking about.
Yeah, so like if your job role is to configure firewalls, obviously your skills training would involve being really strong on those sonic walls or Sophos.
Stand to reason. Mnemonic walls, like we like to say, or mofos.
We
don't name names here, right? Yeah.
The acoustic wall boxes.
There you go.
But again, like sometimes just giving a blatant example. But yes, I get your point. So here's the thing that bothers me is that we also then go, okay, that's skills training, and I got it. But you kind of said this. But what about just general skills training? So if I'm in the HR department, what does it mean to be properly trained on the software? And I think this is a systemic problem in our society. Here's a laptop. I remember I
On the job
remember
training.
vividly. I
Yeah.
have to give you this one. Do you remember when Apple removed the power symbol from the power button on the Mac laptop?
You
I
know,
want to
man,
say
I'm
it was
not
like
going to out myself here, but
2017.
not a huge Mac head, if I'm
That's
honest.
okay, but regardless of what the device is or what the program is, in a lot of environments, there's an assumption that because I hired you, that you should know what to do with the assets and the
Yeah.
applications I'm
Yeah.
expecting to
And
use.
that's not fair. I
No,
mean,
it
it
is
gets
not.
more accurate as you get more and more cloud native and you get more and more humans that have been cloud native, right? That starts to become more accurate, but even then it's not fully accurate.
And
So
we still
let's
skip some
tackle
basics. The
let's tackle this. I agree, but let's tackle this through the actual safeguards. So let's go
okay,
like we've done every episode. So the beginning of this is establish and maintain a security awareness program to influence behavior. I'm just gonna let that sink in. To influence behavior, it has to actually change people, y'all. Like, let's get into that
right, you have to
among
be
the
able to measure
workforce.
success with this,
Yeah,
right? Like,
and we'll get into that of how I think we could apply that among the workforce to be security conscious, comma space. I mean, there's no comma space, but just pretend with me, comma space, and properly skilled, comma space, to reduce cybersecurity risks to the enterprise. Like, so they have to be conscious and educated,
right.
and they have to be properly skilled and capable in order to do so, right? So that's the two pieces that have
So
been discussed here. Yeah, go
before you
go.
jump forward, so this is one problem that I have with it coming or the way it's presented here. And it's one of the reasons why we ended up having to add safeguards from another regulatory body in the trust mark with regards to NYDFS, where it's like, and how are you measuring that you're being successful with this program? Because just saying that we're training you on or influencing you on what to do, what are we doing when those things may or may not be successful? And I think that's something that is missed across many.
Yeah, for sure. 14.1, right, as we get into this, establish and maintain, which again, if we think about that, that's something measurable, right? I can check to
Right.
see if you established, I can check to see if you maintain a security awareness
It is
program.
it is measurable, but also remember you need to measure it.
That's true. It's measurable and needs to be measured. You actually have to
Exactly.
see the effectiveness. And it says the purpose of a security awareness program is to educate the enterprise workforce on how to interact with enterprise assets and data in a secure manner. And I'll give you a great example of where I've seen this failure. Think about that one EMR system that instead of printing, it brought down a PDF file that was then loaded and printed, right? I've run across
Right.
that in my early days. And you have to deal with, like, how do I deal with that now PDF file? Does that mean that we have to bring our, non-shared usernames to individual users and also find some way to delete and clear those files on a constant basis? Otherwise, we might have PHI that's exposed to people that aren't
Yes.
necessarily named users, right? We're getting in to those things of we have to teach the users what to
Right.
look for, how to do things more securely. Perhaps there's a better setting or an option they can follow. So, anyways, I've seen those types of examples. So it's not just about the system; it's about the actual applications they're working with as well. As we see this in this place, right? Like, is that way you read this 14.1 as well,
Yeah, I
Chris?
think I think and this is an area where I think we don't do a very good job collectively. It's kind of like what we were saying a little bit before. It's like if I assume that you're a Mac user and I give you a Mac laptop and you don't understand how to turn it on and off because there's no power button or at least no symbol for a power button, I should not assume anything when I am working with a
Yeah.
new employee.
What else
And
should I teach them?
yeah,
Right.
like, and
This
I
maybe
think
lock your screen when you walk away. Might be part of an
that might
adequate
be
teaching.
yes,
just
but I mean, I
saying.
think across the board
Yeah.
because I think we've become so desensitized to technology as a
Yep.
norm that
Yep.
we don't pause to think that doesn't mean that they know how to use it correctly.
Or this system correctly, right? Like that's
Yeah,
that's the difference. Like, oh, you know how to use a backloader, no problem. Get started. I don't need to teach you about the job site. I don't need to
right.
teach you about what's dangerous. No. You're just good. You've got this. No, you have to teach the nuanced, contextual aspects. So,
Like a tailgate safety session to go with the safeguards.
yeah, exactly. Sit down. Let's look at it. No,
Yeah,
14.1 is the beginning of that program. So 14.1 really just says have a program. That's it. It doesn't say like what's in that program. You'll find that being built by 14.2, right, through the remainder. So 14.2 says the first piece of information of what should I train these people, and it says, hey, let's train people how to recognize social engineering attacks such as phishing, pretexting, tailgating. Anytime you hear such as, that's exemplary language in CIS. It's not saying these are the only things. It's saying such as, like these are the types. What is phishing? Well, phishing is sending an email, potentially with some pretext, which is pretexting, right? And saying, please click here, right? This
yeah.
is your IT department. You're not in trouble yet, right? You get
So
into that core motivation aspect. Okay,
of
yeah, go ahead.
the nine safeguards that are in 14, seven of them start very similarly, right? They all start
Yeah,
with train. So I wanted to bring that
That's
up
it.
right now so that someone doesn't
100%.
go, "Oh, I listened to this part of the episode and I get it. Like I'm supposed to train on fishing and pretexting and tailgating and then boom and like we did that, so we're good." Like no, remember CIS says, "I'm only going to ask you to really do one thing at a
Well,
time."
and let's tackle it this way. When I look at all of these pieces and the way that we visually mapped them, right, Chris? They all tied back to 14.1. They all added to
Yeah,
14.1. The remainder of them add data and say, hey, you need to train
correct.
this, you need to train that, you need to train these things. But even then, when I'm assessing platforms, you know the only way I'll give a training platform a full for these safeguards? Take a guess at how I'd ever give somebody a full for these safeguards. What would that need to have when it really gets down to it? And maybe you can ponder on that if you don't have a guess now. But
You're talking about if for the taxonomy of this control for
yeah,
a vendor to meet it in full.
all of 14 really. But yeah, this one specifically too.
Yeah,
Um,
so I think there's not necessarily an easy way to answer this, but I think it's something that it requires the measurability of what is going into this. I think
that's
that's it.
that's part of it. I actually will tackle that maybe separately. It's not the piece I'm
Okay.
after right now. The piece I'm after right now, and I'm gonna share. I'm gonna shock everybody. The only way I'll give a full on most of these, and specifically, it really comes down to, and we'll jump ahead. 14.9. It says
Duck
role
role specific.
specific. But more importantly, not just role specific, because you could teach coders how to code. You could teach.
Right.
The only thing I'm going to allow fools really in my mind is if you allow for me to upload my own videos into that same track. Because if I can train you
Sure.
on this, I need to be able to train you specifically on where tailgating might be realities in our facility. I might
Right.
need to train you specifically, like not just don't let tailgating.
It
No,
has
here's
to be
the places you
unique.
can't, right? It has to teach them. It has to be about their
Yeah.
world. It has to be
Right.
contextual. And I think that's the gap everybody has right now is they don't make these things contextual. And
Well,
if you look at, yeah, go
but
ahead,
Matt,
Chris.
it's a time problem. I've seen
Sure.
some path organization has been attempting to tackle this with like looking at your journey and looking at what are the things for you and your unique role, Matt, with your job and the areas and goals that you have as an employee of that organization. Does
Yeah.
the skills and awareness training follow that, or at least lead you forward in a direction that says to
But
be successful?
what if you tackled it more simply, Chris? What if as you're
Okay,
looking at these and just said, when I onboard a new client and we're going to set up training for them, let's do a 2-minute video while we're on facility, just showing where the entry points are that are controlled for tailgating. Let's talk about, right? Because fishing will already be covered by the canned ones, right? You can do
right.
fishing through Know Before and through all the different platforms that are out there, or Schmo Before, or whatever you want to call them, right?
They just
And
keep getting new names.
and pretexting, you could also do the same, right? Those are
Right.
fairly already something I don't need to train specifically. But tailgating, I might want to train specifically. Or social engineering, I might want to say, hey, guess what? The CEO, Johnny, right here is going to do a 1-second cut saying, I will never ask you for Apple gift cards. Like, that's all I
Right.
need. I need Johnny to record this and we'll put it in a video. What if you made 14.2 more contextual to the business? And
Well,
as
I
we look
think
at
you should do
14, yeah,
that
go
with
ahead.
all. I think you're onto something because I think this gets into doing it for all of the safeguards. I think this
That's
is
my
one of the
goal.
problems we have. It's like, and I picked fill in the blank of, so before and
Mm-hmm.
other products, and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, so here, watch these canned trainings that were
They'll show Sally acting with Billy the hero, not
right.
doing the thing with the paper. Fine,
I
fine. I
so
got you.
so
Yeah.
I think there's a strategy and an approach that helps solve for this, and that, in my humble opinion, would be okay. Those aren't bad, but
Yeah, no, they're
without
great.
some,
They're
yeah, but
they're a foundation
right,
in my
and I
mind.
think it helps set the parameters around what it is we're talking about. It's
Yep.
almost like an overview to a topic.
Almost to your journey, you might
Right.
say, but then with maybe a very small, specific piece of that nugget that's tracked as well that says, hey, here's our stuff where it
Yeah.
matters,
And
right?
it's
And that's the
interesting is
piece
as
that'll
you
be
do that,
valuable.
as you do those things, and we had this happen at CompTIA, I was going through my security training and I'm like, hey, so there's like one thing that it's asking me in the know before that doesn't match what's in our policy as an
Yeah.
organization. And I was like, what? And so we went back through and we fixed it, right? So like when things are written are submitted and they're generic, there's always the potential like that you got to be
They
careful
can
about checking the
seed,
box.
well, yeah, and they can also create non-contextualized learning. And I guess I've said contextualized a lot or context a lot. What I mean
It
is
is a
like
nice word.
You don't have anything that gives you the ability to take your training and
Apply it.
translate it to your systems you're
Sure.
looking at. You have to make a leap of logic for that context. You have to
And we
jump.
shouldn't assume. It goes back to the
What if we
beginning of
could make
this.
it back to the power button
Yeah.
problem? And that's what I'm getting at. We have to make it to our system. So
Right.
14.3 goes on to say train about authentication best practices. In that scenario, what if we were actually teaching about the type of MFA we're using? It goes on to say
Right.
use MFA, password composition, credential management. What if we talked about our password structure? What if we talked about our credential system? Like, are we using passkeys? Are we using FIDO tokens? Are we using, like, what if we talked about our crap? How
So here's
valuable
a
would that
plug for
be?
that I think is important. Remember that control way back when, where it was like MFA on external systems, MFA
Uh-huh,
on, yeah, yeah,
6.3, 4, right? Yep,
yeah.
yep, yep.
So thinking about that, this is all IG3 on this control, right? Like we're literally in an IG3
Well,
only.
here we're IG1 right now,
Oh,
right?
sorry.
In
You're
this
right.
training, to your
But it
point. But
is a
yeah,
more advanced look,
those are IG2s, to your
right?
point, right? Those
So,
pieces,
but
yes.
when you get to this one, so we talk about this a lot. I give the example a lot, and I say, hey, implementing MFA, what would be a for the trust mark to satisfy the safeguard? I'm like, as long as you got the token getting sent to you via SMS or email, boom, you've checked the
Yeah,
box, you're doing MFA.
yeah,
What this is saying is like, can you imagine doing a training to your staff about that and going, oh, by the way, this is like the least secure way to do
yeah.
MFA. Your
Well, and
employees
more
might go,
specifically, our company moved to this, and we're going to notice changes in your platform that will take away the essence. Like, use your
yeah,
training as real education. And when you think about the RACI matrix, right? When you go back to
yeah,
that shared responsibility matrix, you're talking about the I. There are people that need to be informed. Well, how do you
yes,
inform? That's home training for a lot of people, right? Like, that's the thought. Is this is
yeah.
where we get into
Be a
that
lemming,
information?
jump off the
Yeah.
cliff.
So, anyways, the
Yeah,
point being, and then what's nice about those platforms like the show befores and the things we talked about are they're actually pretty good at giving you the way to matriculate and see if
yes.
people are doing that work, right? And see if they're taking that training.
Which kind of
And more
comes to the
importantly,
next one.
prove it to your point also, to that other piece.
So
Um,
14.4, I think
yep,
this is an interesting one because it sits in the middle of this control.
yep.
And yet back in control 3 was all about data protection, data classification, and this gets into
Using
helping
that.
them, yeah,
Yeah,
using it.
teaching that. How do I
Right.
make sure they're doing it? Like if you have, for example, and a great way to look at it. So let's read the control real quick. Train workforce on data handling best practices. Well, let's notwithstanding the point that we've beat to death already of your data, not just
Right.
some random data of thou shalt handle data in a secure way. All right, I walked away trained. I know about that. It needs
Yes.
to be secure. There are some specifics in here that are very pragmatic, but let's just go through it. Train the workforce members on how to identify, comma space, properly store, comma space, transfer, comma space, archive, comma space, destroy sensitive data. That's a lot of stuff with sensitive data. So they're being very specific on sensitive data. But if you think about that, that means it had to have been classified as sensitive, some form or fashion, whether that be intellectual property, whether that be PII, PHI, financial information, that would be falling under the IP side of things, probably protected information. Those natures, right? Regulated information, contract
Yeah.
information, right? As you think about CMMC or
So
here
I have
171.
a question. I
Yeah,
feel like when I look at this again, I go, how is this control 14?
right. I
Not
don't.
because
I get it.
yeah, and I'm not sure it needs to move up in the sequence in the framework. I think it almost needs to be kind of like what we saw
Oh,
with
I
the
get what you
radius.
mean. How is it not earlier?
Yeah, and
Um,
but what I
but
would
remember,
say,
it is an IG1, Chris. And when you think
sure,
about 3, you won't be classifying data until
yeah,
IG2. So
but
you're already training on it before that. But I'm with you. I'm sorry,
so
cut you
no
off.
no
Go
no.
ahead.
So here's my thought. If you look at the new matrix for the NIST CSF now that they've added
Sure.
governance, you kind of see governance placed over the top of all of the other containers, like
That's
saying this
fair.
needs to happen. And I'm looking at this going, wait a second, this almost has a parallel that needs to come out of its logical sequence as it is today and be shown as a this needs to be happening. And
Well,
it may be
yeah.
difficult for some of them, but like if you don't have an understanding of what this control is about, as you're going through those controls, you're missing the opportunities to bring the training in at the same time.
I don't disagree. I don't know how you solve it in a linear type progression model where you have to take a journey. I think to
But I
your
think
point,
it's
you'd be
maybe a
asking certain
non-linear
pieces to be.
control.
Yeah, and maybe to your point, it goes like governance is one part of it. Maybe it really is some component of the RACI matrix,
Sure.
right? Where like what I would see this as is an interesting way. Think of it this way: what if you could start using ABAC, right, or attribute-based access control? And now part of that attribute is can user access sensitive data? Is user trained? If user
Right.
not
Like,
trained, can't
No
access
access.
sensitive data, right? You're showing governance at the very beginning because you're putting a informational requirement of having that training to be able to do it. You do it in any other
And we
world.
have
Like
seen
if
this,
you're
right?
going
Like,
into looking at OSHA or something, you can't go just run the bulldozer. You have to have passed something that says you know how to run the bulldozer, right? Like,
well, and more
anyways, I
successful
digress.
MSPs, or I shouldn't say more successful MSPs that have grown, that are
are
maturing,
are doing this.
they're doing
Yeah,
this. They have to, because
100%
you
they
you
are.
can't just be like, oh yeah, hey, you just hop in there
It's
and help
like
desk and start calling.
here's a real world practical reason you might train before you touch a system, and it's not directly in data handling, but think about giving someone access to your Sentinel-1 console to manage events before they understand what they're doing, and they
Let's
put in an
set back to
exclusion for the
default.
threat actor, right? Like they don't know what they're doing. You didn't train them, you didn't show
No,
them, and you can't prove to me you trained them, right? You
right.
let someone loose on something that could kill someone, and you didn't train them.
And
That's
that's a
the
perfect
argument.
example of where generic training provided by a vendor is extremely critical, because as a unique in my environment, I should
Yeah,
have
man.
this
Here's my
expectation that,
process flow. Here's my things we're going to be
yeah,
doing. And that applies in both sides of the fence, not just my practitioner that's doing the work, but also
sure.
the end customer and client handling their data that we're trying to train. So this applies in both sides of that conversation. Back to 14.4 though, sensitive data, when they then go on to say you should have a clear screen and clear desk policy for best practices, such as locking your screen when you walk away from it. I have a whole hashtag on LinkedIn for 2023 and 2024 called hashtag lock it up 2023 and hashtag lock it up 2024, where people are finding laptops unlocked at, or
Yeah.
even desktops at businesses with sensitive information on the screen in plain sight when someone walks away to go pee or grab a drink from the bar at the United Club, right? Like
Or
we
that one
don't train
hotel we stayed
people.
at. Yeah. Hey, so
Yeah,
question here, because I know you spend a lot of time, no, I shouldn't say a lot of time. When you have time, you like to enjoy the outdoors, ride a
I
bike,
do.
ride your
I wish I had more
motorcycle.
time.
Right,
Yeah.
we both do. But what's interesting is, you remember the saying, like, leave it better than you found it?
Oh
Like,
yeah,
that's
the
kind of
Boy
this
Scout motto,
control.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, to
like at
some
the end of
extent.
this, it's saying, make sure you clean off the whiteboard. Make sure you
Yeah.
don't leave evidence
Yeah.
of your presence, right? Because that can be used
Well, and
against
this
you.
is really operational security. Like if you think about it, this is OPSEC, right? This is like, Dom and I were going to do a video once, and we were at a school. We spent 35 minutes looking at all the paperwork on the wall behind us to
Yeah,
see if any PHI or PII about those students, I guess more PII,
sure.
about those students might be visible in our
Some
background. Like
some
we had
COPA
to do
data,
that scrub. Well, what
FERPA.
about your yeah, exactly. What about
Yeah.
your whiteboards? What about virtual whiteboards if that's being used? What about, how you store data? Do I just put it on a flash drive? And also what I'll speak towards is when you look at the specificity of this particular one, this is actually one where I will point the finger back at, not necessarily making it the human's fault. And what I mean is, if you think about it, make it harder for users to do the wrong thing and make it easier for them to do the right is a
Yeah.
very good mantra. And if you think about locking your screen, what if we started using things like Bluetooth proximity? What if we started using things that allowed us to say, no, the laptop's just going to lock when you walk away, or setting a very short lock screen time? What if we actually set policies that say virtual whiteboards are automatically erased, or things where you can set the physical whiteboards, if
Yeah.
not, physical with marker, right? The physical virtual, you know what I mean?
Right, right.
But the physical marker, you might have to set company policies and enforce them and train, to your point.
Well, and remember,
Yeah.
what's the first one start with? Awareness program. I believe
Yep.
that anytime you see program or plan, that's another way of saying policy or some sort of defined scope that
Both.
needs to be followed.
Both, right?
Yeah.
Policy and training on said policy for
Yeah.
execution. Like that's it. Procedures, X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Okay, 14.5. So we beat the heck out of data handling, I suppose. Just the one thing I will call out maybe before we leave is the other thing is think about like how to store sensitive data securely being called out. I should be encrypting that anyway. I should make it where the user does not have a choice. That's again back to that configuration and 4.1 and 4.2 conversation. I guess
I
4.1
hear pushback
specifically.
on this one a lot, Matt. Not the training part, but like
The
why,
encryption.
yeah, like we really don't store anything of any value, and why
You
would
don't
we then
know if you
turn on
do
BitLocker, right?
sometimes.
Right? You've
Yeah.
heard it. You've heard that statement.
Yeah.
Like, we're too small of a company, and I asked this question.
Here,
Okay, let's assume definitively you do not store anything that matters on that machine, and that machine gets stolen, but you're not running BitLocker or any sort of encryption.
yeah.
At that point in time, can you
You've got to
still
prove it
prove
to
to
me.
me? You
Yeah, you've
can't,
got to prove it to me.
because they have it
That's
now.
exactly where my mind goes. Like we don't often think alike. Our yellow brick road and our chutes and
Right.
ladders may have just intercepted here, brother. Like
Uh-oh.
I do
There's a
genuinely
bridge over the
believe
road.
that. Yeah, like it should be something where the reason I would encrypt all end user devices, and when you think about it, iPhones or things, you can think
Sure.
about MAM, right, where you're doing
Yeah.
encryption of the application layer. But when I'm doing that, I want to be able to say I don't have to prove it to you. As long as I can
Right.
prove it was encrypted, then we can create a belief in cryptographic shredding, which we've already taught
Right.
about that back in 3. If you want to go back and listen to 3, but yeah, okay. So moving on, I
Yeah.
did bring us back in a
You
circle.
did. Slow death.
14.5, train workforce members on causes of unintentional data exposure. And now we're getting back to some combination of 14.4 and 14.5 of saying, like, we need to teach them about things like misdelivery of sensitive data, losing a portable end user device. Maybe if we encrypt it, we don't care about that encrypted status, right? Or about that unintentional exposure, because now it's not exposed. It's presumed encrypted and not accessible unless you left it unlocked. But I'm back to that point. Publishing data to unintended audiences. Those are things where we have to actually speak about, like, was this an incident? If I sent an
Right.
email out that had, a patient information or maybe a different client partner's information on it, did I have a compromise or
Well,
potentially even a breach
this
potentially,
is
depending
where
on
I
where
hate.
things
This is
go?
why I sometimes hate email. Brian and Brian can be the same Brian or not
Yeah,
Brian. But like, what's interesting is the signatures that often are at the bottom of emails, right? If this does not pertain to you, please delete. Like, how many people actually do that?
yeah.
Right? Like, you're just like, hey, on the honor system, like, I didn't mean to send it to you. Could you please delete it and not use
This
it
is
for?
where, again, this goes back to I don't have to train my users as much if things are systemically that way. Now, that can be a problem too, and I'll come back to a reference of that in a second. But when we talk about this, the great example I mean is what if I had DLP policies in place that knew of the structured types of PII, PHI, contract information, things, and were actually blocking their sending externally in certain ways? What if I systemically prevented my users from making that mistake? What if I just didn't let them walk in minefields, right? Like, what
Right.
if that was my goal? And so when you think about that, if that was
That
the
seems
case,
like
I
a
wouldn't
pretty
have to train them as
solid
much.
goal.
It
Like,
usually is a good
don't
goal,
don't
right?
walk there.
Yeah,
That's bad.
yeah, not good. Minefield
No.
found.
Yeah.
And so you say, well, if I have a social security number being sent out, maybe I don't allow that, right?
Right.
And maybe it has to be based on roles or attribute or other things that come into that conversation. But the point I was going to make is, I was talking to a pilot friend of mine, and I was looking at buying a Cirrus aircraft, and he said, Matt, just don't go get trained there. And he said, and the reason is they'll train you with things like, hey, don't worry about this because you have a parachute. Don't worry about this because you have a parachute, right? The airplane has a whole airplane parachute. And
Yeah.
so the argument is, well, counter to my point of, we wouldn't have to train the users as much, is that when they do that, and then the parachute fails and they don't have the flight capabilities to fix the problem,
Right.
they are now not trained. And so I think the point is you can reduce the amount of training because there are certain systemic things, but you still have to train the conceptual and contextual aspects of it, that if the system does fail, we still have to have training to
That's
say, don't send data,
Yeah,
right? The
this
things
this
like
is no
that. So,
different than doing tailgate safety. Like if I were to sit down with you and say, hey Matt, if you're operating a chainsaw, these are the things that you have to put on. These are your
sure,
safety gear. And you're like,
sure.
but I'm not planning on using a chainsaw. Okay, that may be true, but like, the job that we have, I have a truck full of chainsaws and other sharp objects that I may never authorize you to use.
Yeah,
But you can't come back to me if you pick up that chainsaw and blame me for
it's
something that
fair.
happens to you
That's
when
fair.
you've gone through that training.
And you have to find a balance, right? Because business has to be done. But to your
Right.
point, if you're going to be proximal to the chainsaws and there's a potential somebody's going to go, Matt, get over here and help me out with this cutting, then I need to have already
Right.
been briefed on
And,
that
and the
conversation,
parachute one
right?
makes
So
me
yeah.
feel really nervous. Like, oh wait, how come like for like 30 things that I would have normally been trained on in flight school, they're like, hey,
Exactly, bro.
you got a
Yeah,
parachute.
don't worry about it, man. You don't have to worry about that. If you
Does it
stall, we're just
always
going to
does
deal
the
with a
parachute
parachute. You're
always
good.
pop? Does it always come out? Oh yeah, it does. Okay, so what's the plan if it doesn't come out?
Yeah.
Maybe you should go do all those other trainings.
Let's do the other trainings.
Yeah,
Yeah, to
just
the
in
point.
case.
All right, 14.6, train workforce members on recognizing and reporting security incidents. This also actually builds on a control later that isn't even here yet. Like,
Right.
I don't have any of that until control 17.
IR.
17 is not even
Yeah.
until anything to the IG2s. For the most part, I think you don't get into the reporting aspects. So it's interesting that you're doing a training on this before. And so what I'm getting to is I think this is still appropriate because all it really is, hey,
Absolutely.
Chris, you're my IT guy. I'm seeing something weird. Will you please look at it? I've been told these are the types of weird things I might see. You still
And
have to have that, even if you don't have a formal incident
you
response plan, right?
Right,
Like,
because I remember the first time I went through tabletop exercise. It's been a few years now. I was shocked at how many people didn't understand the definitions of things like incident versus an alert or an
oh,
event.
event or
Yeah,
alert
and
or,
or the
right?
B
Yeah.
word. Like don't
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
the reach with
Yeah.
a B.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
like
Each with a B.
Yeah,
with
and I
our
think it's
somewhere in
interesting
there.
here because that's exactly what it's asking you to do, saying like potential incident and be able to report such an
That's
incident.
it.
Well, what
That's
are
it.
those things? What is such an incident? Like,
Would that maybe be somewhat definable and then also somewhat contextual to my system,
absolutely. And
right?
that's that. There you
Isn't
go.
that the point of this? This whole theme, the thematic aspect of this is, yes, I love automated systems. They have enabled so many people to get basic concepts.
Yeah,
But if you want to be successful, you've got to go, hey, nobody's going to call you and pretend to be another security person asking you to do this. This is only going to come through a right ticket or a blank or whatever it
right.
might be in that definition. So, anyways, I can't, I don't want to be that guy that makes you realize as an MSP or as a service provider or as an internal practitioner that you've got to do so much more work. But I
Yeah,
also don't want to be that guy that watches you die because you're focusing on the shiny baubles and all the
right.
technical things instead of focusing on training up the people that are on the front lines of it.
You bring up a
Um,
really good point, the bobble, the shiny object syndrome, that I have a tool for this, and so we don't have to really do anything. And often you find that in those particular instances is they've deployed a very, very powerful tool, but they didn't bother to
3%.
yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't tune it out of the gate. And so it's been
Yeah.
a year. And now they're like, oh, and fill in the blank and
Yep.
innable or fillable, whatever
All
that's
of it.
called.
All of
All of it.
it. Yeah.
But what's interesting is to go in there and look and see where they're at. And they're like, well, maybe we'll just dump all of it and start over. And it's like, well, there went all the evidence of all the bad guys that are in our environment. But
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I think that that's one really dangerous area that I hope vendors, those that may listen to this, go, hey, we want to make sure that someone using our product, when they implement it, that one of the things that they understand they need to do is to tune it for it to be useful in the future.
Well, and that gets back into the 13 controls that we just finished out with, which is tune security alerts, right? So
Right.
we won't have to beat that to death, but you're right. That is a type of training I might have to have if I was focusing 14 on my technicians. If I was
Yes.
focusing 14 on my end user in accounting, then I might have, a different type of thing. And so it really
That's the
is depending
kicker,
on the
right?
context of where
It
they
has
are.
it has to be
Yeah,
contextual.
it
And
does.
again,
Yep.
if you're playing a drinking game, how many times have we used contextual?
It's a lot. In
It
fact, that's the
is.
drinking game for this
That's right.
episode, is how many times we use contextual, contextualize, contextualizing. I think if
Oh
it comes
man,
to
that's half a bottle
contextualization,
right there.
yeah, oh, you're pretty drunk right now. It's a
That's
good time to
right.
finish up 14. It's
We
going to
have
help with the
three
pain.
safeguards left.
Yeah, and I actually want to focus on something that I always talk about on stage, and I might as well here too, and it's not directly with one of the safeguards, but it is the concept of social proof. When you
Yeah.
think of social proof, it's a British, I think, construct from the 80s or so. And it's just saying basically if you dropped a human or an entity off in another culture, let's say, and I'm bastardizing this so you can just get mad at me, in another culture, and they spoke the language, but they didn't have any of the practices or cultural things, that they would very rapidly be standing in the lunch line. They would very rapidly be going to church. They'd very rapidly want to marry. They'd very rapidly want to do the cultural appropriations of where they are because we want to belong. We as humans want to sit at the campfire. That's why we
Right.
stopped bashing each other in the heads and sitting at the
Right.
same campfire and forming tribes, things of that nature. And so when you think about social proof, it's saying kind of this same concept of you can't beat a dog into being a good dog. And yet we do it all the time. We go up and say, you know what? If we want social proof, we focus on the positive. We say, let's look at Johnny, because Johnny's one of the 89% that did not click on the phishing test this week. Johnny, what was going through in your head when you saw it? Man, I just saw it pop up and I knew it was somebody trying to get me, and I just wanted to protect the company. I didn't click. I sent it in. Man, Johnny, you rock. Is that better than going, haha, look at CJ, he failed. Look at this idiot. CJ didn't want to be better. You can't punch a dog and ask it to be better, right? And so this is kind of that concept of social proof being applied, saying we need to take our phishing and focus on the positive. Here's the 90% and the 91% now that are protecting this company, that are looking at these things. And as you look at the rest of it, you have to apply that social proof of positivity and focusing on the success, not focusing on the bad stuff. Right?
Right.
We always focus on the bad stuff because that's what we're called out to look at. Let's focus on the positive ways we can deal with our
Sure.
technology. Let's focus on the positive ways we can handle sensitive data. Let's focus on the positive ways we can lock our laptop. Let's focus on the right? Those are the
Right.
things where
And
I
how
just want to
can
set
we
that
help
theme.
you as an organization, right? Like I think we forget sometimes like that when we understand the challenges, we have the opportunity to create the sanctions and the rules that help them be successful. Like, do you want to have someone learn bowling by using
Yeah.
bumpers? No. But does
Right.
that mean that bumpers don't help at times?
Right.
100%
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Yeah. It's
Especially if
not
you're
knowing the
constantly
tool,
failing.
right? Yeah. Okay, so let's get back to the safeguards, but I do just want to focus
14.7.
on social proof as a concept that you can take away
Absolutely.
positively. 14.6 we've covered. 14.7, train workforce to identify and report. This is a salacious one, right? To identify and report if their enterprise assets are missing security updates. And I'll give an example where this is true. Think about it this way. I have and use OBS. I do not have admin rights on my machine. OBS is not one of the updatable things by Ninite. It is
No.
not updatable unless you go deep into chocolatey and try to head that path and go that direction.
And
And
it's
so
a
you don't see
constant
these
wanting an
things.
update.
And it's always wanting an update. So what do I have to do as a user? I'm not an admin. I have to put in a ticket and say, hey, do
Yep.
you mind updating OBS? And they know about it, but they have to get this kind of user back and forth to help put that priority and say, I don't have the ability to update. But the salaciousness of this concept of saying train the workforce to have update if their security updates are missing. In the past, as MSPs, we've given pressure back against that, saying, I don't want all these users calling me. We know their security update policy, and we can't patch for a week because their stupid owner won't let us patch for 2 weeks until after the first production's gone into second ring, and they're going to get it popped up. And right, and sometimes you can control it, sometimes you can't. Sometimes it's an application, sometimes it's not. And so, I think, what are your thoughts on this one on 14.7 to train people to let your enterprise team know, right? In this case, maybe an MSP, maybe an internal, about missing patches. And also, there's another part we haven't tackled on this.
So this
which
is my pet
yeah,
peeve. This is not so much the training side of this, but it's the cavalier attitude. I think we've all sort of taken on a little bit of like, my RMM tool will catch it next time. My
yeah.
RMM tool will catch it next time. When is next time too far away? When is next
When a
time?
threat actor happens to making a
Right.
threat on that system
And
based on that vulnerability, right?
and
Like
and
that's
we
the
have
reality.
a level of drinking from the fire hose overload, like oh, it was
Yeah.
a feature pack, it wasn't a security patch. And I think we're seeing some shifting here where solution providers are starting to look more closely at vulnerabilities tied to patching rather than just being patch all the time. They're getting more scalpel on some areas where it can be like, to your point with OBS, like, is there an urgency every time you get notified? Sometimes I have seen OBS literally just say, here's the 4 new features in OBS. You're like, awesome. Like, do I
Yeah,
need
yeah,
them?
yeah.
So I
But I
think
don't know if
that's,
I would ever go down that delineation in my mind. I think maybe I'm going to be the jerk here, but
yeah,
in my mind,
probably.
I would want to start shifting very rapidly to a posture of let things break and patch. And if somebody wants to fight me on that, they're right. Business
So
makes the best
explain, like,
decision, so don't do
elaborate
that.
on that a little bit.
Like right now, you're making a delineation of, well, that has a feature update and it's not a security update, so maybe I don't care about this being a patch from prioritization. Why not make it systemically functional that you're always patching so you don't have to
Sure,
use that delineation and
sure.
actually say that? Because are you
I
really looking at OBS every time or are you asking the user to do it?
Yeah,
And
I agree with that 100%. I guess what I was really getting at is we can get to a point where we've gone the opposite direction too far of like we're just patching without taking into any
yeah,
consideration what might impact,
I'll
we
stand on my point that I think we should. I
right.
think we should
So
patch
here's
without
here's
consideration
where
and
I'll
let
give you
people
an
punch
example.
me.
So I once upon a time worked with the large enterprise, large company, global footprint, production servers can't be down, right?
Yep, gotcha.
So when we do patching, like just because I patched it on dev servers doesn't mean it's not going to have a consequence when I patch production servers.
Oh, I
So
understand.
so that's where some of that and I
I
think
understand.
and
And I would
rewind,
push back
man.
that shitty code process,
Yeah.
that shitty CI/CD pipeline
Yeah.
methodologies,
But if you
that shitty
rewind,
archaic tech debt. I just want to be candid about it.
yeah,
You're
but
choosing which
rewind,
death you choose.
sure,
You're
but
choosing, do I
rewind.
die from the
But
threat actor or do
this
I
is
die from
what
my
we're
own stupid
changing.
code?
This is
Ah,
what we
yeah.
have to change, right?
I'll
So
get
we
off
go
my
back in
soapbox and I'll
time.
break my neck on this one.
We'll
This
go
one
back in
frustrates
time,
me.
Matt. Back in
We'll get
time,
to it
we
in
had this
16
from
hardcore. We'll get to
right.
it in 16
But
hardcore.
commercial applications and vendors that we truly trusted from a security standpoint, and obviously it's coming out now like, hey, we're not in,
We're not any better than you.
right. But part of that is because of those things. Like we remember things like the
Yeah.
print nightmare and some of
Oh,
those, and
yeah.
like people have a sense of fear tied to sometimes
I
like
get it.
I don't want to
This
just
is
flip the
a.
switch. But it's shifting, right? Because to your point, it
Yeah.
is better to have a unknown consequence of doing what you should be doing to
Yeah,
reduce the
man.
probability than just go, yeah, but we know how, Microsoft or whatever they're called in
Yeah.
the past has done it.
I
And
get it.
so,
Yep. And it's true. They're not wrong. There's a business impact from both choices, which means choose your better partner. All right, let's get off this. We're going to get that in
yeah,
16 hard and 15 hard. So y'all are going to have like double
yes.
doses of me and Chris going off on this.
Well,
So,
when Matt hits
all right.
hard, I mean, like your eyes are gonna spin. Like
It's going to be
you will
nuts.
look
Yeah,
in
I
the
just go
same
nuts.
directions
Yeah,
Matt
yeah.
does.
Yeah, it might be. You may have one pointing off to the left.
Hmm.
The other thing I didn't want to miss in 14.7 that a lot of people do miss because they get so hung up on the patching part, but it's of any failures in automated processes and tools.
Right.
right? And that's like the print, your print thing popping up and saying I can't print from Printix or whatever the Mintix or whatever,
Yeah.
or I have this document flow that prints from my EMR and deletes the file out of my local documents folder because that's how crappy the program works.
And the
What if
folder's
it doesn't
full.
delete it?
Yeah.
Well, now that failure is PII or PHI potentially sitting on the workstation. And so what I'm getting at is this doesn't just stand with updates. This is also robotic process automation, traditional automation flows, workflows in general, API
It,
flows, like
which is what it
all of
calls out at
that.
the end. Like it specifically says any processes or
And
tools
tools.
failing,
Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
which
And so
means
it's
that
any failures in automated processes and tools. And so you're getting
this is an
into,
end user nightmare, right? Because a
uh-huh.
lot of times, especially if things happen frequently, they'll
They
just
don't
go,
know.
eh.
Yeah, they're not aware. And so where does that detection need to be trained? And that's the part where it's like, is that me training my IT staff that's going to respond? Is that me training the automation engineers to look for this failure? Is that me training the end users? And so it does say
Yes.
workforce. It doesn't mean that it's all focused at an end user. It could be focused on those practitioners doing some component
I
of this
think
as
this
well.
kind of comes back from the previous one or previous safeguard where it talked about some of the based on what you do, the skills training, right? Like
Well, it's
I think
17,
some are
14.9,
generic.
which we're going to get to
Well,
here in a
it
minute.
it
Yeah,
does
yeah, it's
that more
later.
specifically with roles there, but like
Yes, for sure.
I think the workforce part for me is to remember this one thing. And I had this happen a few times. Oh yeah, I haven't been able to print from my laptop for like 8 months
Yeah,
now. But
yeah, yeah.
I just email it to
I just
myself and I
emailed to my
print it.
personal Gmail and then I
Yeah.
print it right here at the house. I'm not worried about it, man. I
Yeah, I'm not
got
worried about
this.
it. And like, and you're
Yeah,
like, oh my
data
word, if
exposure.
I'd have known it was
Yeah, yeah,
happening to more
thanks.
than one person,
I could have
I
fixed
actually would have
this.
known the fix to
Yeah,
this. I
yeah.
thought it
And
was
the
an
problem it's
anomaly.
creating, right? To
Yeah,
your point, and the
exactly.
failures in my DLP that allow that, notwithstanding, but yeah, to the point.
All right,
Okay, so
14.8.
14.8, we're talking about training workforces on the dangers of connecting and transmitting over insecure networks. And again, I bring this back to what is a network is shifting. And as we start putting in other controls such as ZTNA and encapsulation and other things, I might not care as much about that ITM or in the middle type challenge that comes from the insecure network. I might not care about that not being encrypted because it's going to be encrypted in flight with my wraparound and the things I'm using from a ZTNA perspective.
Sure.
You could see TLS being a big part of this as it's deployed for ZT. But the point being, right now, if you're not in those scenarios, then you have to say, hey, Matt, if you're not connecting over a secure network that you are, with, then don't connect to it. And that gets into like Wi-Fi networks at the hotel that are unsecure. How do
Let,
you deal with that? Like, what is
let's
the company
trivialize this
policy?
for a minute, Matt.
Yeah.
Let's just think about it at the most basic level for the average end user consumer. What happens when the lock is missing from the browser and you're shopping?
Yeah, yeah. Just
We
keep clicking.
Right.
It's
Like I
fine.
just
You're
had
not
this
giving away your
happen
credit
with,
card information.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
helping somebody the other day. They're like, yeah, I wasn't able to purchase the shirt. It kept erroring out. And so I went and checked it out. And I'm like, there's no lock on this browser. You're getting prompts that says, please call, your iPhone has been compromised. Like it was malvertising, but
Ugh.
still it was the
Ugh.
potential to be
Yeah.
catastrophic. And none of the users are recognizing the fact that without a lock, it should be blocked.
This is also in this safeguard one of the first times here where you see a conditional statement, an if statement, and this one applies to almost everyone since COVID. And I don't know that people are really solving this. I almost guarantee they're not. The first piece says train them about connecting unsecure networks and train them
Right.
about transmitting data over insecure networks. And it really goes back to like VPN or not, which wireless do I use? Do I bring a hotspot? That part's
This
a separate
control essentially
conversation.
says you're a home user now. You're just like any other
Yeah.
consumer.
The right side says if the enterprise has remote workers, comma space.
Well, it
Training
says it even more than
must,
that.
not shall, not should, must include guidance to ensure that all users securely configure their home network. BS. It's not happening. No one is doing this. This is
It
not happening.
it's the
Period.
scary part is it doesn't just say remote worker. It specifically calls out home network.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, can
Yeah.
we get any more personal than that? Like,
Well, they're saying like it's that argument of do I send a VPN based firewall over to the home and let that was the age old question
right.
during the beginning of COVID, right? And you're getting into how do I they've got some crappy Linksys running with an external port
Was it, would
that I
you
can
say
pop.
Stinksys? A
Yeah,
Stinksys
Stinksys is
router.
what I meant to say.
Got
You're
it.
right. I
Yeah.
did say Stinksys, but they're running some home-based firewall or something that's not been updated in 36.5 years, right? I think
Yeah,
that might be
36.5. I
hyperbolous.
think that was before
But
the firewall, but
it
yeah.
was a long time. Yeah, yeah. But the point being is this is a control and a safeguard I know you're not meeting. I know that. I know it. You're
We
not meeting it for your
and
MSPs. You're
is
not meeting it for your
that
end clients. You're not
but is
meeting it.
that the answer?
It's not. The answer in my mind is changing the way we connect to a network. It is changing that when I have a host device,
Yep.
I have a host-based system that is using agent-based isolation from the network
Yep.
stack, that is controlling what's allowed to be sent, that
So
is
I'm not
controlling
saying
ZT and access. Yeah,
I
I think
want to
it's a
make
shift.
sure people understand that I'm not saying that this safeguard is invalid or that it
Oh,
should be
fair.
followed.
We're talking
So
about the problem with the world
yes,
in this
so
case.
and I think Matt, I think we've said this before. When I say something might be considered a legacy safeguard, that by no means says don't do what this safeguard is calling
Yeah, it's
out
fair.
where
That's a great call out.
applicable.
Yeah,
Where
that's a great
applicable.
call out.
So yeah, just want to keep that out there.
All right, last one, boys and
14.9, last
girls.
one.
14.9, another one that I know we are not
This
succeeding
is
at.
the only one that's
Yeah,
not an IG1.
it's an IG2, and it is for a reason. And I think that is because until IG2, you don't really understand RBAC, and you don't understand data, you don't have classification, you don't understand what people are using. But let's read this. Conduct role-specific security awareness, first half, and skills, second half, training. Role-specific, right? My accountant needs to know how social engineering is going to attack him or her. My CPA or my
Yeah,
CEO is going to need to know what their attack surface looks like. My
sure.
CFO, my board, my X. And so what they're getting at is for IT professionals, you might need secure system administration courses. This goes back to everything we talked about in 14.2.3.4.5.6.7.8, applied now, saying think of each of those in the
Yeah.
lens of 14.9 for an IT professional. Same thing for a web developer. Maybe the OWASP top 10 might matter to them, of like what those top vulnerabilities they might create,
And
right?
that's a great example, Matt. Just let's just talk about OWASP for a second. OWASP was
The
not for the
Open
faint
Web
of heart.
Application Security program, right? Or,
Yeah,
oh, I just totally failed it. Okay, call me out.
yeah.
If you're in the comments, call me out. I suck. It's
Yeah,
okay.
web
Project.
applications
It's project.
security
Open Web
project.
Application Security
Yeah.
Project. All right, I redeemed myself, I think.
So yeah, that was close. I mean, that's, I was worried there for a minute. What was interesting, so full disclosure, I was a terrible developer.
Me
But I
too.
did do a lot of web application UX, IX validation for user experience, and so web forms, that was my space. And what was really interesting is, and we see this still today, this has been more than 20 years, the not documenting the code, not putting any sort of protocols in place that says this is privileged access, not following the general, but like to go and say I'm following OWASP, like
Yeah.
that's a learning process in and of itself. Like this
It's
is,
training your developers.
yeah,
You're actually having to do some validation. You're actually having to make sure they're taking specific training, probably more contextual and actually in the code type training, like you see from, and I will name this one, Jim at Manicode, right? And this is
yeah.
not a fake name. It is actually Manicode, Manicode, and things to that nature, right? So you actually have to do a lot to make this happen. It's not just
Right,
training, it's
but I think
validation,
this
things
is
that,
often an overlooked safeguard because I think
yep,
we think that the tools and the pre-canned stuff we bring into our environments
they don't do it.
are preparing us for this one, and it's not.
It's not. They're separate tracks. And that's what I'm trying to pick out, is saying specifically for 14.9, I won't give you a full as a platform unless you let me upload my own LMS videos, because that's the only way I think you can solve that level of contextualization in this way. If somebody solves that, where you can put in like a WYSIWYG of which firewall do you use,
Right.
which do you use, like you could maybe get closer to that as a learning provider, right?
Yeah, and so it
If you're
doesn't
doing things
have
of
to
that
be
nature.
entirely, it can't, custom software, but can you pull stuff in
Yeah,
from
can I bring
other
in my own
places?
stuff that matters? That's all,
Yeah,
and track the use of it. That's what I'm
right.
looking for an
And we're
LMS in that
starting to
regard.
see that. So I know
I've
one,
found it with, so we've added one to our platform that does
right.
that,
So
right?
I know
Like
one off
starting to
the
see
top
more
of
of
my
that.
head,
Yeah, I won't
CyberHoot.
name them.
I'll
Okay, you
name
can
this
name
one.
one.
You can name
Yeah,
one.
I
I
named one
named
earlier, so you
CyberHoot.
name this one. Yeah, go ahead.
And I'll name another one. Well, I don't know another one. I think Empath might be doing something along those
They're
lines.
starting to do things of that nature, yeah, as
Yeah,
well. But you also have major platform providers too, so I won't
yeah,
go down that path. But and then the last one is like training high res or high profile roles, right? Like
right.
advanced social engineering for my CEO, for my
Please go
Matt
to
Lee that
Best
travels on the
Buy.
road all the time, right? Like what are the things that are going to be those attacks if you're a thought leader? What are those things that are going to be those
Sure.
attacks if you're, a speaker or a attorney or a CEO or a CRO? It was funny
Yeah,
because
I'll be on vacation for the next 3 weeks in
we
Cabo.
we
Please don't
we
hit my
got
Facebook
specific
account.
training. We got a new CEO right at
Yeah.
PAX 8. So Scott Chasen was announced as our new CEO
Yep.
maybe a day or two ago. And 4 minutes after the email came, or after that email came out, we got another email saying, "Hey, all aiders, we just want to let you know that there will be a high volume of attacks such as this one." And they start showing those attacks of people trying to say, "Hey, I'm Scott. I need those." You know what I mean? We need to
Well,
meet Tuesday
right.
for an important get on the same page meeting.
Like
Things to that
I will
nature. So
never text you from my
right.
personal cell phone, right?
And that goes back, Chris, to saying when we looked at all of those different things, I need to make a custom video of 2 minutes of a CEO going Scott Chasen saying, hey, Scott
Yeah.
Chasen here. I'm never going to call you. I'm not going to text you. Our
Right.
policy is this. This is the way you're going to have to get it. And maybe you even don't go that OPSEC
If
where
it
you're
ain't
giving away
on
that
Slack, it
policy.
ain't.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
call me back.
Yeah, nice. And it needs to have this or whatever it
Right,
may
right.
be. But
Like what,
the point
what's
being,
the
yeah.
identifier that you know it's me? I think we had that
Well, and
call
you get a
out.
risk of training it that way too, right? Because that training falling in the wrong hands could be the training necessary to emulate. So it's always this balance of
Yeah,
OPSEC and training. But
for
I think
sure.
you do some degree of paywalling back behind follow this process. Click here if you ever have this situation and it's easily accessible in your SharePoint or wherever that is. Like that's the path forward. And we have that, right? I have the big old thing that says submit a security incident or believing a script,
Yeah.
click, and it says all the types. It makes it super easy for me, right? You need to give people that path forward to understand, but they have to understand their specific risks. And I take 14.9 to say this is another example of why when you do the yellow brick road method and you do 14.1 through 8 and you happily walk through with this kind of yay, I think I've solved it, and then
Right.
you read 14.9, you have to reassess all those things I talked about in 2 about context, and in 3 about context, and in 4 about context, and in 5 about context, right? I don't have to keep going for the point to be
Oh, I
understood.
wasn't sure there
So
was another. I was starting to catch on.
you thought there was a pattern, like it seemed to
Yeah,
be this
maybe a
linear
pattern there.
natural number pattern? Is that seemed to be the fashion we're
So
in?
I have to tell you a funny about as we're wrapping this up. I have to tell you a funny. So the Fireside Chat, as a part of 1337 podcast,
Sure.
comes out once a month, right? It's the
Yep.
third Tuesday. I can tell you consistently, this episode almost gets verbatim the exact same number of playbacks at
Hmm. Well,
62 or
whoever's
64.
listening, you're awesome. Thank you so
Yes,
much for bettering yourself in CIS.
but
Sorry, go ahead,
here's
Chris.
where it gets funny. When we go back to what I would consider are the more critical controls. So I
Yeah.
go back to like control 5,
Yep.
100 playbacks. Control 4, 100 playbacks. Control 3, 90 playbacks. After 5, and
Yeah.
this is what I think, and of course I could be totally wrong.
Oh, are you trying to make an argument for your shoots and ladders yet again?
Mm,
Okay, just checking.
Maybe, but the first 5 to 6 controls in CIS
Yep.
are really the fundamental,
Yeah, they're foundational for sure.
foundational. That's the readiness program. It's all of the things that help you be successful, whether it's for another framework,
Systemically, at a
systemically.
system
Yeah.
level. Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that there's an attrition that says, okay, I've made it through Control 5, listening to
Oh,
the episodes, and I'm realizing that I have work to do that has me going back and putting more effort in
yeah,
to
it's very
be
possible.
successful when I pursue these later controls.
Yeah. Well, and I think you'll find, and maybe this is a real correlation to life, Chris. I
Oof,
never look back at any work I've ever done and think I did a great job. I've
sure.
always looked back at every work I ever done and said, can I make this better? Can I be
Right.
critical of this? Is there something I can do to make this better? And I'm not saying that gives you a lot of good feels in your heart, but it does make you, I think, a very good person at iterating upon oneself and your capability. And if you think about CIS in that way, you should always be looking back at that safeguard and seeing, has something changed in my world? Am I applying this properly? Is there something different? Do I need to apply more? Have I been attacked in a certain way? Do I need to learn where I failed to configure this properly? Right? I think as you go through the safeguards, you should always be improving. And that's the whole point of like even Trustmark as you think about that and the way we're applying it, right? Is
Right.
you can never pass with the same status quo. You will always
No.
have to be better than yesterday.
Well, I think that's it. Like, I think we can say maybe you pause sometimes because
Yeah, it's
you've
fair.
done
Take a breath.
something. You got to take a breath. Yeah. Like, it's like no one can tread water forever. So at
Yeah,
some
no
point you
doubt.
may need
True
to get out of the
story.
pool for a little bit
Yeah.
and recharge. But yeah, to your point, I think that's something that this is that top-down model, right? Bottom up isn't, you can't go to the CEO and say, "Hey, I know we just implemented this thing and now we need to implement the next thing." And the CEO goes, "Well, yeah, I'm not really into the whole, like, we're just going to keep adding stuff." It's like, well, what are you into? Failing stuff? Like, if it's not top down, it doesn't get
Fair.
adopted. Yeah.
That's fair. Well, I
So,
think it's a perfect way to end this
end
episode. We've
it like,
probably
yes, for those of
already
you
beat this to
listening and you
death.
haven't figured out what day this is, we are going to say it's Tuesday. So have a great week, everybody.